But I want to bring in my good friend from New York. He flew all the way in just to be with y'all.
All right, New York.
The real, I hate the real He's the real deal. Ralph Poynter. Let's give it up for him.
Thank you, my brothers and sisters. And talking about understanding, I tell you a little story. Back in 1962, when we were organizing to put the first black principal in the city of New York into the school system. Remember, we're living in the day and age of a black president. But there is the black face on white imperialism, we must remember that. And when we were fighting to bring in the first non-white principal in the city of New York, a holiday came. And the famous woman, Queen Mother Moore, says, well, what are you going to do for Thanksgiving, Ralph? So I says, I come from Western Pennsylvania, and I'm going to go home to be with my family. And she said to me, what do you mean, your family? Your family are the people who are going to fight with you when you fight the police. Your family are the people who are going to protect you when you're fighting this evil system. Your family are the people who are going to organize with you to help the people. We are your family. And so what did I do? From that year up until the year when New York wanted to have another blackface in the mayoral office, when I refused to support Dave Dinkins, our organization that had been in effect having family meetings broke up over that issue because we failed to teach everyone else what family meant. It didn't mean a color. It didn't mean a religion. It didn't mean lack of religion. It meant people organized for the same purposes. A unity of purpose. And our unity of purpose is to have decency for everyone. Now, what you see today was very predictable. Now, at 84, and I went to my first union meeting at 5 years old in Western Pennsylvania with my father. And all of these things that we have today and we see today were predictable. How do I know? People said, this is what's coming out. This is what you're going to be looking at. It's not going to be about religion. It's not going to be about any philosophy other than decency for all. And any philosophy that doesn't stand for decency for all isn't worth being involved in.
That's right.
And every philosophy that stands for decency for all, you must be involved in.
That's right.
And now I'm on fighting fracking. And I have a place upstate New York, right on the Canadian border. And I have a lot of contact with Amish people. And someone said to me recently, what are you doing with those Amish people? Nobody likes them, and they don't like us. And I said, well, let me tell you a little story. Up in the North Country, in a prison town, Malone has 3 prisons. And it used to be a final stop in the Underground Railroad. And the last house on the Underground Railroad, you could come out of the basement, and then you could look across the seaway. And the people who got up in the morning, ex-slaves who had traveled for months from the South, and they stepped out of the basement, and they say, look, there's freedom. All you have to do is walk there, 5 miles away, and then take the boat across the seaway. And so I couldn't help myself. I broke into the house. I checked all of the spaces that were hidden spaces where people could hide, knocking on walls and floors. And I went to the basement, and I looked up, and my wife said, don't do that, this is somebody's house. And I said, I can't help it. Can you imagine being enslaved, escaping slavery, and being 4 or 5 hours from freedom. Got to do it. And I broke out of the cellar door, and I stood on a little hill, and you can go there today and look across the hill to freedom, and what's there? You can't see the seaway because there are 3 prisons. And who's in the prisons? You know who are in the prisons. And I am so glad I did that, because that was a lesson to me that the struggle must be continued. And as I said, I come from Western Pennsylvania. My father took me to a union meeting at 5 years old. Well, we couldn't join the union, the AFL. It was the CIO. And he organized in the coal mining towns, in the steel towns, in the farm towns, in the countries, because we couldn't join. And when I became of age and went into the coal mine, and you go 5 miles underground, and you'd come out at the end of the day with broken backs if you were fortunate, and the water towers were segregated. And so my father said, desegregate the water tower, shower and wash where you want to wash, and dare everyone to tell you no. And that's where I learned resistance. Let your motto be resistance. Let your motto be togetherness. And I remember being in another struggle. And you may say, what is he doing in all of these struggles? Because I have learned wherever there's an injustice and you see it and don't do anything about it, a bit of you goes away. And if you watch enough injustices without doing something about it, you soon become nothing. But if you see wherever there is a man or woman who is doing right and they are alone, you must say, as long as I'm there, and I'm going to be there, you're not alone. So you can find a lot of places to struggle. Upstate New York, the Amish don't have anything to do with the rest of us. They have their separate schools, they have their language, they walk rather than ride, they live the way people lived hundreds of years ago. But a situation came upon me, an injustice. A young man had come up from Syracuse. He was in prison. He got up, he brought his wife. And land is free. Indigenous people have lost their land. And so if you go on welfare, they give you a trailer. They give you a space to build a trailer. And then you stay on welfare. Well, up in the North Country, it's almost as bad as the Northern Peninsula here in Michigan. Everybody knows what that means. The North, it's bitter, it's cold. While right up there in New York on the Seaway, winter comes like a curtain. And this family was there, a young man, his wife, and 2 children, and he says, come see me. And so I went to see him, and he wasn't there, and I went up the little hill on a piece of land they had given him, and I saw a long 8x8 on a stone, and I said, this man can't even drive in a nail. Well, the next thing I saw is he put up a tent. And the curtain of winter was coming. And he burnt the tent down, trying to stay warm. And so the next time I go to see a group of Amish who were friends of mine, and I looked across the hill, and I saw a home, a house that was built on that space. And so I looked at the woman and I said, what happened? What happened here? And she says, well, Ralph, instead of having Sunday services, we went and put up his home. And so I say to you, I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what you call it. I don't care whether you have it or not. Because personally, I would be lying to you if I told you I had religion. I don't have it. They had religion. They took their Sunday services and didn't talk about it, but they built a house. And these are my people. And Betty says, how is it that you can't go anywhere? You go to the harness maker and you end up spending the day. And I said, because they won't let me go. They say, we love to talk to people like yourself who understand and are willing to stand beside people and work with people, even though we disagree with your way of solving problems. Well, I'm going to tell 2 quick stories. My ex-wife, who died recently, was the great attorney Benton. As I traveled around the country being involved in these various issues, she had a special time to call me. She had 5 minutes a day. She was in prison in Fort Worth, Texas. And so one particular day she called me and she says, where are you? And so I said, I'm in Benton Harbor. And she says, you're in Benton Harbor? And I says, yes, so what's wrong with being in Benton Harbor? And she says, you're in the Deep South, if you want to know about racism. And I says, well, how do you know that? And she says, I went to Hope College for 3 years. That is the Deep South. You're in Barron County. Get out of there. And I said, no, I'm working with Reverend Pinkney. He's helping me get petitions. We got 90,000 petitions. Bishop Tudu, Ed Asner, people from all over the country signed to free Lynn Stewart. And I said, and Reverend Pinkney is doing a lot of work on your behalf. And so she said, as soon as you get those petitions, get out of there. Wow. That Barron County is a bad place, and it's got a bad name. And as you said, and as you are the testament of what happens when people forget religion, race, economic circumstance, and join together, then change will come. It's predictable. Now, as I said, I am not a religious person. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. But my mother was the finest Christian you could imagine. She practiced her Christianity. I went to every Christian church. I went to Christian summer school, Christian after school, Christian before school, because she says, this is a Christian house, a house of God, and you're living in it. You're going to know about this religion. But this good Christian, at 14, when we went to the Cesar Roebuck catalog store, there were no malls. There were hardly roads. There were blacktop roads with no lights. There were no malls. There were no Sears and Roebuck stores. There were catalog stores. And when we went to the catalog store, one evening she couldn't drive, and I could drive. And she looked up, and she says, if I buy that for you, will you use it? Well, what that was a Marlin 30-30 rifle. And by that time, she says, you have fought with too many racist men and beaten them in this town. They're not coming for you with their fists anymore. They're going to come with you, after you, with guns. If I buy it, will you use it? She put $5 down, and she bought that gun. Wow. This was a good Christian woman. Don't tell me what Christians see about those who understand and do something about it. They are people we need to support. And throughout history, we've had political prisoners. Those people who use a gun in self-defense. And a gun is no different than a hammer. You can break down something with a hammer, you can build with a hammer. We must do the support work of our political prisoners. I don't say you have to get a gun. I get angry. I've been given the hook, the time. I'm going to finish. You don't have to take up a gun, but those young brothers and sisters Marilyn Buck, David Gilbert, I can go on, Sekou Odinga, Kwesi Balagu, all of these brothers who took arms against the sea of trouble, what Shakespeare told us about it. To be or not to be, to do or not to do. You, my brothers and sisters, are the people who do. Please include in your work the work of supporting and writing to those brothers and sisters who understood an evil. And as Sister Lynn Stewart, who passed, said, those brothers and sisters feared a little less with corrupt people who kill young brothers and sisters on the street because they fought back. They killed them too. And you can't tell me my mother's not a good Christian. She understood that. If I get this, will you use it? Let us support those who understood that principle and used armed struggle in self-defense. And as predicted in all of those years when I was told, Ralph, soon water's gonna cost you more than gasoline. It seems stupid, but they said it. Ralph, it's coming. And the need for self-defense, they said that too. Wasn't yesterday, it wasn't 10 years, it wasn't 20, it wasn't 30, it wasn't 40, it was 50 years ago that I was told it's coming. It is coming, and I am so happy to be here with Reverend Pinkney, who understood that his struggle was my struggle. And he supported, he did something about it, and they put him in jail. And I said, don't worry about this, Reverend, you gotta run for mayor. Don't be behind anybody, be down front, because we've all been in jail. Doing right in a corrupt system is about being in jail. And when they say, you know, Reverend Pinkney was in jail, well, I says, I know Reverend Pinkney is supporting all of us, he's supporting the right issues, and when you tell truth to power, you go to jail.
That's right.
You've been to jail, and I look forward to be out here and start campaigning. Where are you running for, Reverend Pinkney? I want you to be in the mayor's office. I don't want to recall you. I want to support you to get there. All right. So thank you for listening. And you will see me as long as you see Reverend Pinkney down front here fighting for justice. Thank you.